All right, hello everyone, and welcome to yet another billionth video in doing exam prep for the 2020 VCE economics exam. It's the 27th of October, which means that the exam is exactly 4 weeks away, almost to the minute. It's 2:22 right now, and around this time, in 4 weeks' time, you'll be sitting in some kind of hall with a very monotonously voiced examiner reading you some instructions. Probably have already done that. You're probably going to be in reading time. You're probably going to be answering some difficult multiple choice questions, which hopefully this video will help you solve. So today we're going to be looking at poorly answered exam questions from 2019. So last year's exam, essentially what students got to the exam, sat, looked at it and went, oh no, I don't know that, I'm going to guess, and did terribly on it. We're going to look at how many people did badly on it, why they did so badly, and how we can fix that, because we're going to get into a tip on this next slide here. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it, which is a quote by George Santayana, then adopted by Winston Churchill. Yeah, I'm bringing a quote into some of these videos. Bring some class. But seriously, VCAR loves to re-ask questions which were done poorly in the past. So it's a good way to predict some of the harder questions on the exam if you look at previous years and see what people have done poorly on, because often that means they're going to ask it again, and there's often a series of repetition in the questions that they ask. So there are some things that happen in a year that's done poorly. People try and get good at that for the next year. Sometimes it comes up, sometimes it doesn't, but I would rather be prepared if I was you. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at a few multiple choice questions that were done poorly, some short answer questions that have been done poorly. I'm going to do this a little bit differently from some of the other videos, because often a lot of these short answer questions we've already done in other videos. So if you want to see sample answers for them, they're going to be in other videos. We're going to break down essentially what they wanted from people in it, why it was done poorly, and then I have a little incentive for you. If you want to write an answer to some of the short answer questions yourself and send it to me for some feedback, whoever does the best one, I'll send you a pen. And the pen says, if it focuses, it's not going to focus, but it says, accounting sucks, economics forever, Mr. Bryan 2020. If you would like, it's a pretty good pen, writes really well. If you want one of these, answer one of the questions, send it to me. Maybe I'll give you a pen. Who doesn't want more stationery? You need pens for exams. Maybe you don't want it. I don't care. Your choice. It doesn't affect me. But learn from the past. Get good. Get a good result. Make your parents proud, or make yourself proud. Get into a university course that probably won't help you in your future careers. But getting on to the first question. Question 6 from 2019. They're all from 2019. We're going to be looking at a maximum price set below the equilibrium price will cause greatest shortages if what? So as I say, for all supply and demand type questions, it's always good to draw axes. So we use our trusty drawing tool here. So we've got options here. So both demand and supply are price inelastic. So we're going to have a graph that looks like this. Both are elastic. So we're going to have a graph that looks like this. Demand is inelastic. So demand goes down and supply is just normal. And then we have demand is normal and supply is inelastic. It's a really good idea to draw that, because then all you have to do is set a price below the equilibrium. So let's just go ba 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 ba. And all you then have to do is see which of your graphs, let's go a different color, let's go green, has a bigger gap below the equilibrium between supply and demand. So if we look at this one, it's pretty small, the space in here. It's not that big, therefore not that much of a shortage. We look at B, that's a big shortage up in there. Like, look at that, that is the amount of supply, that is the amount of demand there. That's massive, that's a big shortage. There, a little bit smaller, there, a little bit smaller. So it lets us know that when they're both elastic, it's going to end up being B. Both demand and supply are price elastic. So if we look at question 6 over here, like if we break out our highlighter and go over to question 6, only 29% of students got this right. So that means 3 out of 10, essentially less than 3 out of 10 got this right. And look at how quickly you could solve that by just drawing all the options. I think the big issue that comes up, I've repeated this tip 1,000 times, people just try and picture the graphs in their head. And with a situation like this, where you've got 4 different combinations and you've got trying to think about shortages rather than just the elasticity or degree of elasticity, drawing it is the only way you're going to be able to accurately get to the correct answer. So do that and you won't stuff up. Because they might ask the same kind of question. Maybe they'll ask a greater surplus. Maybe they'll ask greater shortages will occur when, or if demand and supply are price elastic, which of the following is true. It could be any variation on that, and being able to draw it and show that is going to make your answer a lot easier to get to. Next up, question 12. A contractionary stance in monetary policy by the Reserve Bank of Australia could be achieved by. So we looked at this question. If we look at the amount of people that got it, we have 55% of people got it right, so just over half, which is not bad, which is kind of fitting, seeing as you almost have a 50-50 chance in this, in selling or buying Commonwealth government securities. Comes up a lot because even I get this mixed up all the time because I try and answer it too quickly. You got to start thinking about the logic of what's going to happen. So when the RBA buys government securities, it puts money into the money supply, and when they sell them, it takes money out of the money supply. So in this case, a contractionary stance means they want to increase the cash rate. So the cash rate they want to increase. So if we go back to having a pen, they want to increase the cash rate. And so that means they want to decrease the money supply. And so to do that, they're going to sell government securities. It takes money out of the money supply. And so then we are going to get to the answer, which is C, because they want to decrease the amount of money in the overall money supply. I panicked for a second there. I was explaining it, and a little bit through I thought I was wrong, but then I remembered that I wasn't wrong because I'm competent and this is my job and I understand what I'm doing. So you just need to get down those 2 points. If you know they want to increase the cash rate, which means decreasing the money supply, you can get that to that point. So selling government securities takes money out of the money supply, therefore that's the most correct answer. And you can see most people, if you look at the actual answers here, 73% of kids knew they wanted to decrease the money in the overnight money market, and then they were just kind of flipping a coin on selling or buying. Selling takes money out of the money supply, buying puts money in. Make a note of that somewhere really clear, simple. Selling, less money supply, buying more money supply. Then hopefully you will not ever get that wrong. All right, this next question is really, really simple, and yet only 37% of people got it right. So just over 1/3, and that's pretty crazy. So based on the data shown above, the unemployment rate in a hypothetical economy is. So how do we work out the unemployment rate? Well, it is the amount of unemployed persons over the labor force. And what is the labor force? The labor force is the unemployed and unemployed people added together. So you want to add those two together for that bottom number. And then VCA loves to throw in extra information for no reason, so you can get rid of these guys. So this one and this one, not relevant to the question. They're just thrown there to distract you, to the point where most students end up using that 100 and being really confused and not knowing what they're doing with it. So we want to get the overall unemployment rate. So that is going to be 10 over 10 plus 70 equals 10 over 80. And VCA tends to like relatively simple math. If you think it's simple or not, I'm finding more and more students don't know how to break down fractions and stuff because no one does math anymore. But if we break that down to 1/8, 1/8 is 12.5%, which ends up being your answer of C. It's really just about doing that equation correctly and being able to work that out. So you see the majority of people chose 10%, and that issue being that people went for 10 over 100 because they did over the total population. The whole population isn't included in the labor force. Underemployed people aren't included in this because they're considered employed, so you've already counted them. So that's some of the key things, but all the numbers there are designed to, if you do the wrong calculation, your answer will probably come up. And so that's a bit of an issue that you need to be able to kind of like know the correct calculation so you don't make that mistake. All right, and then we're going to go into the short answer. So some of these we've already done. So if you look at in this one, I believe in one of the videos that we've done, aggregate demands, like so, Unit 4, Area Study 1, we looked at assuming an economy is experiencing a fall in the rate of unemployment but a weaker than expected growth in wages. explain how the scenario might influence the setting of aggregate demand side policies. So as you can see down here, the average was 2.3 out of 6, which is really, really low. One of the first things that's an issue that comes up is that when it says aggregate demand policies, that's budgetary policy and monetary policy. So you've got to talk about both. That's going to be probably 3 marks for each. And the setting. So the setting, that is going to be their stance. So that's going to be expansionary or contractionary. I'm going to talk about that for both of them and why. The tough thing here is kind of getting to the point of budgetary and monetary policy do not directly impact wages. And so that's important to know, because so many people, when they're doing this, either came up with dumb things like the government should just increase wages, which no, that's not the answer that they're looking for. It's about saying that they're going to go for an expansionary approach, because if they go for an expansionary approach, it's going to create more employment. And if there's more demand for labor, this puts upward pressure on wages and creates wage pressure. And so it's all about being able to make that point of what expansionary budgetary policy might mean, potentially giving an example of that, how that would then lead to more demand for labor, and why that would lead to wages growing at a faster rate. Same with monetary policy. So if you want, have a go at that, send it to me. I'll more than happily read it and judge you in a nice way, give you some feedback. Then we've got 3B. Select one example of a budgetary policy automatic stabilizer and describe how it operates to influence aggregate demand and the rate of economic growth. This surprises me that this is done so poorly. So 1.8 out of 4, quite low for what is a relatively easy question, because when you look at automatic stabilizer, your options are that it's either going to be welfare outlays or tax receipts. And so realistically for this, you're going to be talking about how either of those things and how a change in one of those things is going to impact AD and then economic growth. So if welfare outlays are increasing, what's that going to do? If tax receipts are increasing, what's that going to do? Choosing one of those, then going through, I'd probably go through both directions. So like, because it hasn't given you an option, saying one and describe how it operates. So I'd be like, well, if tax receipts are increasing, this represents more leakages, which is going to decrease AD and decrease eco growth as firms downsize, etc. So that'd be one. But then I'd be like, well, also, if tax revenue is decreasing, that means there's going to be decreased leakages and potentially increased private consumption spending and therefore increased aggregate demand. And then go on to like, if there's increased aggregate demand, this sends a signal to businesses to increase their production, which leads to higher rates of economic growth overall. And so it's just about taking one of those and talking about those. People tend to really struggle with automatic stabilizers because they forget what they are or how they operate, but it's really, really important. And it's kind of not that difficult, to be honest. So if you look at VCAR's advice down the bottom there, many students evidently did not understand what an automatic stabilizer was, nor could they accurately identify an example. The examples are really easy. Welfare or tax, just do it. Just don't be wrong. That's the easiest exam advice ever. Just don't be wrong. And the last one that we're going to look at, assume Australia experiences an unfavorable movement in the terms of trade across a 2-year period. Across, that's not good. That's bad English. Across a 2-year period. Explain how this scenario might affect Australia's domestic macroeconomic goal of strong and sustainable economic growth and Australian living standards. So the average for this was 2, so 50%. Slightly over a pass if you're in my school, where 40% is apparently a pass mark. But students seem to have difficulty explaining the terms of trade, and many were not able to define it. So being able to define the terms of trade is a good skill to have. So it is a ratio of the export price index over the import price index. Good to be able to do that. So define the terms of trade, get good at that, have that definition somewhere. And they had difficulty accurately explaining what an unfavorable movement in terms of trade might mean for Australia's goal of strong and sustainable economic growth. So if the terms of trade, if there is a decrease in the terms of trade, that means that either there is decreased import prices, that means there is increased import prices. So let's get rid of that. There's increased import prices and decreased export prices. One or the other. It's and or. Remember that point I've been making in the past? Always and or. So and slash or. So if there's a decrease in the terms of trade, that means we're really paying more for our imports or receiving less for our exports. So this is going to represent in aggregate demand increased leakages or decreased injections, which then leads to decreased aggregate demand, which should then hopefully lead to you saying that we're less likely to meet the goal of strong and sustainable economic growth as firms downsize, etc. This is likely to harm Australian living standards because particularly if firms are not producing as much, they may lay off workers, therefore people are materially worse off as they do not have an income or average incomes are lower. They also may be not materially worse off as they may feel more stressed about their future, all those kind of things. But that's essentially it. Like being able to define the terms of trade, you're almost guaranteed there's going to be a terms of trade question based on how poorly it's been done over the last few years. So being able to do that well and breaking, like as I've been saying, keep things simple. Don't overcomplicate things. So the idea of ceteris paribus, all other things equal. When you're talking about the terms of trade, assume nothing else has changed. Just the terms of trade has changed. The volumes that we're exporting and importing are the same. Just the prices have changed. And that's how you get to talking about them being either we're paying more for imports, therefore there are more leakages, or we're receiving less for exports, therefore there are less injections. Being able to do that really clearly, really accurately is really going to help you out. And that's essentially it for things that have been done poorly in 2019. If there are any other questions for 2019 you are unsure of, hit me up, send me an email. If you want to, as I said before, if you want a glorious Accounting Sucks Economics Forever pen, which is out of focus, but you can tell that it's great. Answer one of these questions, send me your answer, and if it's good, I'll reply to you and ask where I need to send it. Because why not? It's funny. I've been spreading these around the school just to make the accounting teacher feel bad. Other than that, any questions at all, feel free to email, leave comments, whatever. Like, it's been really great being able to help people out. If you have any other requests for anything you want, feel free to send me a message. I'm hoping that I've got a presentation prepared for 2018 that I'm going to do similar with. And then also, like in the lead up to the exam, so probably in the week before, I'm going to do a video looking at updated major figures, like all the major figures, what they're currently at, what ones you should know. And then we'll be all good, and hopefully you'll smash the exam, and then your teacher will take all the credit. But that's okay, because I'm not in this for getting credit. I am in this to just help as many people as possible. So on that, hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.